exploring feminist film theory through the comparison of the 1999 American film The Virgin Suicides, directed by Sofia Coppola, and the 2015 Turkish film Mustang, directed by Deniz Gamze Erguven. I will investigate to what extent the theory of the male gaze is present in female-directed films with feminist messages. This study is justified because the way that we view women is important. Analyzing how women are perceived in film contributes to a greater understanding of the way that women are perceived in society. These films tackle the issue of perception in different ways, at different times, informed by different waves of feminism and from different countries, but it remains that some facets of girlhood are universal. The Virgin Suicides is based on a book from the 1970s, during the time of second-wave feminism, and was made in the 1990s, during the third wave of feminism in America. This contributes to a focus on objectification and commodification as a result of cultural systems, such as conservative religion and courtship. Mustang was influenced, set, and filmed in modern-day Turkey. It is in the time of fourth-wave feminism. This context leads to the depiction of traditional patriarchal oppression and its collaboration with institutions such as child marriage and religion. First, we must define the male gaze. Originally, it was defined in critic Laura Mulvey's now-famous 1975 essay, Visual Pleasure in Narrative Cinema. It is the depiction of women from the masculine perspective and is defined by three sets of eyes: the man behind the camera, the male characters in the film, and the male spectator. The camera is often an extension of the often male protagonist's eyes. The Virgin Suicides works with an awareness of the male gaze and its embellishment. The cinematographer Edward Lockman puts the Lisbon sisters in a dream world. They become romanticized by this stylization. There is warm light, lens flares, close-ups, animation, and overlays that show the girls with an unshakable delicateness. These warm, romantic shots are plentiful enough that they characterize the girls throughout the film. They are very much from the perspective of the group of boys that are infatuated with the sisters. Mustang cinematography is in touch with realism. The camera is more matter-of-fact as compared to the Virgin Suicides. There's a purposeful diversion of over-sexualization, as Erguven has spoken of this very strong filter of sexualization that she felt growing up. The shot of the girls playing in the school uniforms and water could have very easily been over-sexualized, but it depicts innocence instead. This scene, the sexualization of the girls' actions, serves as the genesis for the plot. The natural unromanticized shot conflicts with the reaction of the town. The camera in the Virgin Suicides clings to details where the camera in Mustang often has a wider composition. There is an abundance of natural light, and the purpose of close-ups is not to accentuate beauty. One shot in particular, depicting a virginity test with very little color in the shot and no camera movement, really speaks to the naturalism that the camera demonstrates. The cinematography of the Virgin Suicides is dreamy and ethereal, while Mustang is shot with realism. The male gaze is overwhelmingly present in the cinematography of the Virgin Suicides, but is to show the perspective of the boys that fantasize. In Mustang, the male gaze is removed to a large extent from the cinematography to communicate that the narrative is being told from the point of view of Lale, the youngest sister. It is her experience, and there is nothing to sexualize or objectify from her perspective. Much of the area of the male gaze in regards to how the male characters within the film see women is centered around how they do not see women. In one of the opening scenes of the film, Coppola employs animation and freeze-frame editing in addition to the golden-lit cinematography to further communicate the way that the neighborhood boys see the Lisbons. In another scene, this inability to accurately see girls is expressed through the symbolism of the boys crowding around a telescope that they cannot focus to view Lux having a sexual encounter. This could very well be an applicable commentary on scophilia and voyeurism, Freudian theories about the pleasure of looking as applied to cinema by Mulvey. Mustang expresses the patriarchal disregard of women through the male character's avoidance of eye contact with the sisters. One scene tracks Lale as she walks through a table of her uncle's friends. None of the men acknowledge her. A more specific commentary is made in engagement scenes featuring the elder sisters. In a symmetrical two-shot, we see a young man awkwardly avoid eye contact with his arranged fiancée. She also emotes distress. A different scene shows a sister receiving an engagement ring from her new in-law as he is in the foreground not making eye contact. She looks off-screen for an escape. Narration is an essential part of understanding or not understanding the male characters in the film and their gaze. Mustang does not offer explicit insight into the minds of the male characters as the story is narrated entirely by and from the perspective of the youngest sister, Lale. The male gaze is not present at all in the narration of Mustang. In contrast, The Virgin Suicides is told entirely from the point of view of a male character. The audience is given his observations and theories about the girls as we experience an overwhelming nostalgic confusion with him. The effective narration is a clear definition of who is telling the story from where they are experiencing the story. The male gaze in the narration of the virgin suicides is prominent. However, it is again intentional to demonstrate the confusion involved in the perception of women. It is a confession. In male gaze theory, it is argued that the image of a woman depicted on screen is for the pleasure of the male spectator. Neither film fulfills this aspect of the theory. The performance of the actresses plays a large role in this. The Virgin Suicides presents images of the girls that are morbid, these images juxtaposed with the rose-tinted cinematography and lively movements of animation. Coppola was actually so worried about these morbid themes that the film had a small release because she feared teen girls would commit suicide. In Mustang, the beauty of the girls is not inherently linked to their sexuality or their moments of submission. There is a criticism in classic Hollywood of female characters existing within the male gaze to have a look-attedness. The characterization of the girls as a strong unit and of Lolly as fiercely independent combat this fulfillment of the male gaze. The deviation from the male gaze from satisfying the male audience gives dimension to these female characters beyond their looks or their attachment to male characters. The presence of the male gaze is not innately negative. The depiction of women through the masculine perspective can be problematic, but it can also be communicating the male experience. The omission or the usage of the male gaze in female-directed films can be used to draw attention to a larger problem. And a recent study by USC's Annenberg School found that females are grossly underrepresented, with only 4% of directors being female. Another 2016 study found that only 8% of the top 100 films that year depicted a young female lead. There is a crisis of underrepresentation of women behind the camera and in front of it. Both films draw attention to the fact that there is not enough depiction of the female experience. Both Sofia Coppola and Deniz Erguven agree on this, and made films that depicted the female experience to change it. Coppola once said, "There wasn't much poetic filmmaking that spoke to me as a girl and a young woman, and also treated with respect that I felt that audience deserved." Gamze explained the power of her film. The place of women in Turkish society is something that is completely objectified, so for the first time we're in the experience of what it is to be a girl. The Virgin Suicides problematizes the male gaze with its presence, and Mustang omits the male gaze in favor of female gaze. Regardless, both films explore the female experience, which in the film industry has been relatively virgin territory.